ready for a deep dive. We're jumping headfirst into the world of Indian courts. But hold on to your hats, because this isn't your typical law school lecture.
Definitely not. We're ditching the legal jargon and uncovering the human side of the story. Why is India's justice system struggling? And what can be done to make it more, well, just?
Those are the million-dollar questions. And our source material today pulls no punches. It throws out this pretty startling statistic right off the bat. Over 3.5 million court cases in India stuck in limbo for over a decade. You heard that right? A decade.
Yeah. A decade. It's kind of hard to even wrap your head around, right?
Yeah.
Just imagine being labeled an under trial. It means you're stuck in this system, accused, but haven't even had your day in court. Years go by. Years. And sometimes people are wrongly accused. Talk about a nightmare. It just erodes your faith in the whole idea of a fair and speedy trial. Livelihoods are destroyed, families are torn apart.
Wow, that paints a sobering picture. Makes you wonder, what's the root of this massive backlog? Is it as simple as saying judges are overworked, or is there more to it?
It's way more complicated than that. Our source digs into the bottlenecks, and honestly, it's a whole bunch of things. One glaring issue is just the sheer lack of judges and resources.
Right, that makes sense. Not enough hands to handle all the cases.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Then you've got these outdated laws, some of them about as efficient as, I don't know, a horse-drawn carriage trying to navigate rush hour traffic.
Oof. Yeah, that's a visual. And we can't forget about all those adjournments, when they basically press pause on a case.
Yeah.
I get that they're sometimes unavoidable, but it sounds like the way it's done now is a recipe for chaos.
Totally. Imagine if instead of this last-minute scramble for an adjournment, it was all done electronically, streamlined and in advance.
Evolutionary, right. Judges could actually have time to review the requests. Lawyers would know when to show up. No more frantic phone calls. It would be amazing.
It's like upgrading from like a clunky old flip phone to a smartphone with all the bells and whistles, everything's smoother, everyone's in the loop. But going back to the source, there's one point that really stuck out to me. The sheer volume of land disputes clogging up the system. Oh, absolutely. Land disputes. They take up almost two-thirds. Two-thirds of all civil cases. It's mind-boggling. It's like this massive elephant in the courtroom, and it's all because our land ownership system is so incredibly messy.
So it's not just a court problem. It's bigger than that. It's like this deep-rooted systemic issue that needs a serious overhaul.
You got it. If we could somehow streamline that land ownership process, make it crystal clear who owns what, imagine the pressure that would take off the courts. It would be huge.
Huge is an understatement. It'd be like clearing a blocked artery in the justice system, right? Get things flowing again.
Perfect analogy.
I do love a good analogy. Okay, we've talked about the lack of judges, but the source actually puts that into perspective with this crazy comparison. It's the number of judges per million people in different countries. Ready for this? The UK has 51 judges per million people. The US has a whopping 107. But India, only 20.
See, that's what I'm talking about. That right there shows you the massive capacity challenge India is up against. Fewer judges means an insane caseload for each one. It's like asking, I don't know, a single chef to cook a 5-course meal for 1,000 people. Good luck with that.
Oh my gosh, that's brutal. And it's not just the number of cases, it's the way they're scheduled. The source mentions court calendars sometimes having over 100 cases listed in a single day. 100. Just imagine the pressure cooker that creates for everyone.
Oh, I can't even imagine. Talk about pressure. It's like juggling 100 tennis balls at once. Is it any wonder things get delayed and backlogged? This chaotic scheduling just throws a wrench into the whole system.
Okay, so we've waded through a sea of pending cases.
Drowning in adjournments.
And like a severe lack of judges. What now? What about solutions? Does our source offer any light at the end of this rather long and winding tunnel?
Absolutely. It wouldn't be a deep dive without exploring potential solutions, right?
True that.
And this source, I think it delivers now. One idea that really caught my eye was the whole concept of judicial clerkships for India.
Okay, borrowing from the U.S. system.
Exactly. Taking a page from their playbook.
I'm all for borrowing good ideas.
Right. So picture this. You've got all these bright-eyed law school graduates raring to go.
Eager beavers.
Exactly. And they get this incredible opportunity to work side by side with judges as judicial clerks. They become these invaluable allies, like a judge's secret weapon.
I like it. So they're basically easing the burden on the judges, helping with research, maybe even drafting judgments.
All of that. Plus navigating the world of legal tech, which, let's be honest, can be a maze.
Oh, totally. Like having a tech-savvy sidekick. But would this U.S. model really work in the Indian context? That's the big question.
It's a fair question. But think about it for a second. Not only are these clerks giving much-needed support to the judges right now, but we're also talking about creating this pipeline of highly skilled legal eagles for the future.
So it's a win-win. We tackle the backlog and we build up a more efficient legal workforce for down the road.
Precisely. Killing two birds with one stone. And there's another awesome side effect. Think about the law schools.
Oh, yeah. What happens to them?
Suddenly the pressure's on, right? They need to make sure their graduates are top-notch, the best of the best, because those clerkship positions are going to be highly competitive.
It's like this ripple effect of positive change. More efficient courts, better trained lawyers, even raising the bar for legal education. I'm sold. But as much as I love this idea of clerkships, our source keeps emphasizing the need to think bigger, to tackle the root causes of this backlog.
You're absolutely right. We can't just keep slapping on Band-Aids, adding more judges, more courts, more clerks. At some point, we have to address the source of the flood, not just keep bailing water.
Exactly. So what does that kind of systemic change actually look like? Give me the big picture.
Well, the source throws down the gauntlet. It challenges us to be bold. Can we dare to simplify our laws, make them crystal clear, easier to enforce? What about finally creating that unified, transparent land ownership system we talked about earlier?
It's about shaking things up, questioning those age-old practices and saying, hey, what if we did it differently?
Exactly. And a key part of that transformation, and the source makes this very clear, is embracing this idea of evidence-based policymaking.
Okay, let's unpack that for a second. Evidence-based policymaking. What does that even mean when we're talking about India's legal system?
It means we stop relying solely on good intentions, and we start looking at cold, hard data. Do our laws actually work? Are they achieving what we hoped for? And are we brave enough to admit when something isn't working and try something else?
So it's like treating lawmaking like a science experiment. We test our hypotheses, gather data, analyze the results, and we're not afraid to tweak the formula if it's not giving us the desired outcome.
Exactly. It's about being honest with ourselves and having the courage to say, okay, this approach isn't working, let's try a different approach. And the source argues that this is absolutely essential if we want a legal system that's not just efficient, but truly fair and just.
I love this idea of evidence-based policymaking. It's like we're bringing this whole scientific mindset to the world of law, right? Like we wouldn't just take a new medicine without testing it first, so why should laws be any different? But this all sounds like a massive undertaking. Who's ultimately responsible for making this kind of change happen?
That's where things get really interesting. You see, the source doesn't just put it all on the lawmakers or the judges. It actually highlights the crucial role of everyday citizens. You're listening right now. It argues that an informed and engaged citizenry, that's the secret sauce for a truly just and equitable society.
I love that it brings it back to us. It's easy to feel kind of powerless when you're up against something as huge and complex as India's legal system. But you're saying we actually have more power than we realize.
Absolutely. The source makes it clear. Chief ministers, government initiatives, they all have a part to play. But real lasting change, that requires citizens who get it, who understand the system, who can hold their leaders accountable, and who are ready to speak up and demand better.
It's like we need to bridge this gap between the system and the people it's supposed to serve. Because at the end of the day, this is our justice system, right? It belongs to all of us.
Exactly. And that's where the source hits us with this really powerful thought. It suggests that the key to unlocking a more just and efficient future for India might actually lie in empowering ourselves. It's a call to action. It's saying, hey, how can we be the change we want to see?
That's such a powerful message. It's not enough to just sit back and shake our heads at the headlines or feel overwhelmed by the sheer scale of the challenge. We need to become informed, engaged citizens who demand better from our justice system. So let's get practical. What can someone listening to this right now actually do? How do we even begin to make a difference?
That is the million-dollar question. And the source throws out some really intriguing ideas. Imagine a Know Your Courts campaign, something that empowers citizens with knowledge about their rights, about how the legal process actually works. Think about using technology to make the system more accessible, more transparent. And most importantly, imagine a wave of citizens demanding accountability, pushing for reforms that lead to a more just and efficient future. It all starts with awareness, education, and a commitment to action.
This deep dive has been incredible, eye-opening to say the least. We've journeyed through mountains of cases, explored the hurdles, and uncovered some really inspiring solutions. There's one thing I want our listeners to take away from this conversation. It's this. Don't be a bystander in your own justice system. Engage with it, question it, and be a force for positive change.
Beautifully said. The power to create a more just and equitable future. It's not just in the hands of a select few. It lies within each and every one of us. So go out there, stay curious, and never underestimate your ability to make a difference.